Spring ball starts today, and Kyle Whittingham met with us beforehand, first time in Ann Arbor. My takeaways from his media availability and where things stand right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Thank you to all of our everydayers who watch or listen to the show every single day. Also, big thank you for making us your first listen. First, we're going to start out with my question and what Whittingham said about, well, we'll just get to it, as well as the theme that I am sensing. Then we are going to get into what he declares the purported team strength to be. Finally, there's some inconsistency about scheme, but maybe not. Let's discuss that as well. Let's get into it. So I had asked Whittingham, it took me a while. I don't think the SID saw my hand, and I thought he had. It's trying to be the first question. Didn't work out that way. It was more like the 13th or 14th question. But no one had asked what I had asked. And actually, it was kind of worked out because I had a twofer. But the question I did ask essentially is how do you balance what you're accustomed to at Utah versus what you're inheriting at Michigan? And then the question I didn't ask was about just the talent. Like how do you acclimate to just the talent? He actually ended up answering with the talent. So here's what he had to say, answer to my question. He said, Utah was more of a development program. We had the 2- and 3-star, rare 4-star guy, but needed to take some time with them to develop. But here, these guys are more ready-made. I can tell you that. The freshman class that came in, they're not all here yet. There's about 7 or 8, maybe 9 that will be here in the summertime. But those guys, a lot of those guys are going to help out right away. I mean, the tailback, Savion is special. I believe he's going to be a special player. And there's another handful of guys that we think in the freshman class are going to be real contributors, major contributors for us right away. And didn't have that luxury at Utah very often. Usually had to wait a year or two to develop those guys. So it's interesting in and of itself that he didn't even speak much on the extant players, right? The players who are already there. Now, he will get to that, and he does get to it to some degree. But I think that what you get here is him talking about the freshmen and everything. I think that's interesting, and you'll kind of sense a theme by the end of the show. I'm not going to spell it out just yet, but maybe I will. maybe I'll spell it out in this segment. But you'll sense still just a theme kind of going all the way through for the most part. Is that these younger guys, they seem to have a lot kind of going for them. And now, obviously, he only mentioned Savion. He didn't mention any other names. But it is interesting to think like, okay, before we had to really work on guys, now we can get them going right away. I think that's a huge difference from what obviously he had. And what makes it kind of even more is like, obviously, Utah, BYU, the places out there, like they get a lot of guys who are maybe young, but not necessarily that young. I mean, not fully, right? They're not only getting the LDS church guys who go on their 2-year mission, right? Like that would be disingenuous. But still, they had a fair share of those guys that were coming in more at 20 years old rather than 18, and still then had to develop. And then you're dealing with a 22-year-old. 24-year-old, depending on just kind of how you'd gone through it. But I do think that it is number one, just the recognition, because he could obviously just not even recognize that. Now that would be probably dumb, and we don't think he's dumb by any stretch. But just to be like, oh yeah, there's more talent here, we still got to develop guys, and they still do, right? Like that's, but what's interesting is the idea that maybe you might be seeing some younger guys playing more. So that leads me to the question about the wide receiver room that he got, the penultimate question that he answered today. And I really, really liked what he had to say there. Actually, I included a quote that I didn't want to include here. So let's just delete that. There we go. So asked about the wide receiver room. Here's what he had to say. Andrew Marsh, he's a tremendous talent. That's very evident. And Jamie French, we brought him from Texas and has done a really nice job. Salesi Moa, our true freshman, has looked really sharp in the workouts. JJ Buchanan, transfer from Utah. So those are probably the top four, still jockeying for position for the next four. You typically travel about 8 receivers, 7-8 receivers. And so we know that those top four are pretty darn good. And we're just trying to sort out that next tier. But those guys, those 4 guys are going to be very good Big Ten receivers, in my opinion. Why? I mean, obviously, there's multiple reasons why that's interesting. But I was going to say, why is that interesting? Number one, he mentioned 4 guys. They're all second-year guys and 1 first-year guy. And those are the starting receivers. Now, we knew that was probably the case, right? They don't have a lot of, they don't have an Amara Darbo and J. Hugh Chesson on this team, put it that way. But you kind of just you get this, and I think I did want to include that other quote. I think I had it in there for a reason and I completely wrecked it. I just think and I did, yes. I think it's interesting because you're counting on a lot of younger players who I think are poised to break out. And the good news is you maybe have another year with those guys too. So there's just a lot to like about the fact that he's looking at it and he's saying, like, look at all this talent we've got. Look at all of these young players that we have that are going to be starters. Look at look at the less amount of work we have to do to get them poised to be the types of players we need them to be to win games. If you catch what I'm trying to say. I'm a little underslept because it was a 10 a.m. press conference and I'm an insomniac. But still, I really like that. Okay, I didn't mean to include this quote, so I went back and found it. So here is kind of the tying together of just the first 2 sections here, talking about the offense in particular. Our offensive coordinator, Jason Beck, does a masterful job of utilizing the players at his disposal and the talent and what they do well and tailoring the scheme to that. And so Jordan Marshall is a really good running back, obviously. Bryce Underwood is a dual threat quarterback. Last year at Utah, we were second in the nation in running the football. We had a quarterback that was a very good runner as well, and Devin Dampier, of course. But Bryce, we think he can beat you from the pocket or with his legs. And then to have Jordan, a quarterback's best friend, is a strong run game, and Jordan helps provide that. So I just feel like it's, you have, again, a youth movement mixed with identification of abilities, mixed with a willingness to use them as they are likely best used. That's kind of part of where I'm getting here. I think that is such a radical change because obviously, and I went and looked and everything. Bryce carried the ball, I think it was 88 times. Let me see if I still have this open that I wanted. 88 times for an average of 6 carries a game. I say that, but he also wasn't he wasn't necessarily carrying the ball 6 times. There weren't 6 designed runs or 6 designed takeoffs. Some of those were sacks, right? Because they still gave up sacks on some of those things. Look at the difference here. Devin Dampier carried it 146 times for 835 yards. Bryce carried it 88 for 356, I think it was. So you've got a guy in Devin Dampier who was averaging 70 yards per game on the ground and averaging 5.72 yards per carry. Just to go back here, rushing wise, Bryce was averaging 4 yards per carry in 6.7. It's just, I think a lot of that more was Bryce calling his own number than anything else. So at least now you have coaches that recognize what they have. You have coaches that recognize that they don't have to spend as much time doing some of the things that they maybe had to do in order to get their team ready. And I think that could pay some really early dividends. I'm excited to see kind of what this ends up looking like. All right. Do I want to do things the way I wanted to? I'm going to reorder things a little bit. We're going to go to scheme next, but we're going to do that here in just a moment. But before we do, what if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator, play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the US, download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. All right, we're going to continue on momentarily, but before we do, spring ball is here. And guess what? Spring is the perfect time to refresh your space and make your home better for you. Whether it's updating a room, adding some outdoor furniture, or finally organizing that cluttered corner, it's a great chance to bring a fresh look into your home. That's where Wayfair comes in. From furniture and decor to organization solutions and outdoor essentials, Wayfair makes it easy to find pieces that match your style and your budget. What I like about shopping on Wayfair is how simple the process is. You can filter by size, style, and price so you can find exactly what works for your space. The thousands of reviews make it easy to shop with confidence, and options like easy assembly or installation make the whole experience smooth from order to setup. Whether it's a new desk for a home office, some storage solutions, or outdoor pieces for spring, it's easy to find something that fits both your style and your daily routine. Find furniture, decor, and essentials that fit your unique style and budget. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. If you've been thinking about joining the Everydayer Club, now is the time. Again, get ad-free shows and access to our group chat on Discord. And if you're signed up before the NCAA tournament tips off, you can get into our Everydayer Club bracket pool on Discord for a chance to win Locked On merch. Should be a lot of fun. I've already signed up my bracket. I couldn't figure out a way to export it, so you can't see it, but regardless, right now you can use the code MARCH to get your first month free. Head to lockedonwolverines.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, let's talk a little bit about scheme, because I think that this fits in. Although there was a little bit of cognitive dissonance, I think that happened here. You'll see what I mean here. So, I think one of the interesting things when we talked about the development school, the development piece, all of that stuff. And one of the things, so asked about like the idea of his scheme and just the ethos that he has, Whittingham said this, and I think this is really, really interesting stuff. 3 or 4 years ago, we made a concerted effort at Utah to simplify. With the portal and the roster turnover and all you can't have a scheme on either side of the ball that takes a year or two to learn. You don't have that luxury. And so I don't want to say that we dumb things down, but we simplified things. Jason Beck, we brought him in last year, and one of the main reasons we brought him in was that his scheme was very user-friendly and the learning curve is not as steep. It's very effective, but the learning curve is not as steep. And defensively, we modified things and made that simpler, more simplistic as well. And so that is a big part of football today at the collegiate level, making sure that you've got a system that essentially plug and play, because you're going to get a guy. Some of our guys won't get here till summer, and we're counting on them playing this fall. And we've got to be able to get them up to speed rather quickly, very quickly. So that's interesting. However, and I'm just going to kind of go through these, and then we'll discuss more. It's at odds with something that was said earlier in the year that we've talked about quite a bit in the last 2 weeks, and that's Jay Hill going on In the Trenches and saying this. I would say we run the most complicated scheme in the country. We have more calls. We do more things with fronts and coverages. This is not something that they pick up in a day. We're going to need all spring. We're going to need all summer. We're going to need all fall camp to have us ready to go for the first game. And by then we'll be ready to go. So who's telling the truth? I think it's weird, because I think the answer to that is yes, both. And here's what Whittingham had to say about Jay Hill. He said, because he was asked about that. Jay Hill, our coordinator here, I don't want to say it's a cult, but I'll start with my father. The defensive schemes that we run, that were run at BYU, It's all kind of an offshoot on the starting point. The origination was brought to Utah by my father in 1993. I don't want to say complicated, but there are some moving parts to it. But again, things have been simplified. And if you don't, you're going to have a hard time functioning because you can't get these guys ready to play soon enough. And so I don't have any more comments about his quote, but I know here you guys will be able to plug in and get things done right away, if that makes sense. So how I say this, but like we talked yesterday about Nathaniel Owusu Boateng essentially kind of almost making it sound like, yeah, it's not the most complicated thing. Like we figured out we're playing fast. I think the answer to that, it's like, which one's right? I think the answer to that is yes. I think ultimately, like, guys can come in and play fast right away, but they just don't necessarily have the full breadth of the menu. The menu, like, they're chefs in a kitchen. The menu is easy to make, but they don't have the whole menu and won't until game one, essentially. But what they do have, they can execute right away. The things that they're able to do today, Thursday, whenever the next practice is, I think they get in pads over the weekend. I don't remember the schedule offhand, but I know it's today and Thursday. I think like they can go out there and they can execute those things. They should be able to do it quickly, but at the same time, they don't necessarily, they don't know how to make the thing that they're going to be making later in the year just yet, but they are able to do the limited menu. They can't do the full chef's table, but they can do the appetizers right now. And then by the end of spring, they'll be able to do maybe some of the salads and sandwiches. And then by the time we get through fall camp, then they can do all the entrees as well and desserts. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how I look at it. Now, I wanted to tie this in, even though I had this slotted for segment 3, into segment 2, because I think what's interesting here is also they don't want to have to wait for guys, whether it's offensive or defensive. They obviously have a lot more offensive impact transfers than they do defensively. I mean, I shouldn't say a lot more because John Henry Daly and Smith Snowden and Chris Bracey, right? Like they've got some of those types. But at the same time, like I think there's something to this idea of we need to make things like user friendly, like he said. We need to make it so like we're going to be bringing in transfers. We can't spend all this time trying to get that guy up to speed, because what have we seen over the course of the last decade? It didn't even matter if it was, like Don Brown or, DJ Durkin to Don Brown to Mike McDonald to Jesse Minter to Wink Martindale. Almost all of those, it was kind of like they'll be able to do it pretty good right away, but like it might take a couple years before they're really excellent at it. I don't think that's the case based off of if Whittingham is right. I don't think that's the case. And you've already seen with Jason Beck that that's the case, because he went from New Mexico, 4th offense in the country, 2nd rushing offense, goes to Utah and does the same thing. Now, granted, with some of the same players that he brought from New Mexico to Utah, but I mean, at the same time, they still did it. So I think that having some of those guys not with him, right? Like, yeah, you got JJ Buchanan, who was at Utah. That's the only offensive player that they got from Utah. The rest come on defense. So I think like being able to take the guys that they have the guys that they brought in and say like, we're going to figure out how to make it so that you can run this right away. And just, I think that's also why when they're talking about the freshmen in particular, it might not necessarily be like what it was in the last couple of years, especially on offense, right? Like now we're talking about Salesi Moa being like essentially a starting caliber receiver type. I think that sometimes you look at the 5 stars and say that, but I don't know that that's necessarily consistent. You say like, well, if everything goes right, then maybe that's the case. But like here you're saying like, we have simplified things to the point where even like our young players, the Salesi Moas and Savion Hiders of the world, should be able to come in and be impact players right away. I think that's massive. So, all right, we've got more to get to. We're going to talk about what he said about when he was asked about the strength of the team. We're going to get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, the biggest stretch of the college basketball season is almost here. Buzzer beaters, bracket busters, and those unforgettable moments that everyone's talking about the next day. But being there live for something like that, that's bucket list stuff. The hard part is actually getting tickets. Long queues, prices jumping around, and surprise fees at checkout. The Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans with constant innovation. It's how you unlock amazing tickets and experiences in just a few taps. It's incredibly simple to use. The Game Time guarantee means 100% legitimate tickets delivered on time at the best price. And here's the best part. Fees are included in the price that you see. What you see is what you pay, period. The seat view feature is a game changer. You can see a panoramic view from your exact seat before you buy. Zone deals let you pick the section and save even more while Game Time selects the seats. I love being able to follow the teams in the app because then you can get alerts when the new deals drop. There's no stress, no guesswork, just a smooth experience from start to finish. That's exactly what you want during the busiest part of the season. Take the guesswork out of buying college basketball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege Locked On, not just Locked On College, Locked On for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. All right, we're going to continue on here momentarily, but before we do, welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which might just be sleepers. 5-Hour Energy shots give you a boost with zero sugar. We're choosing between two. Blue raspberry with its sweet and tangy flavor with a taste that nature couldn't make but should have, and fruity rainbow with its sweet layered fruit notes in every single sip. I'm picking blue raspberry as my number one overall pick. With fruity rainbow is right there. It's right behind it. It's my number two at the moment, but don't look now. Confetti craze. It's making a push. It's right there. It could absolutely be a sleeper pick. So find your new favorite flavor of 5-Hour Energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. All right. So, Whittingham was asked, what would you consider the strength of the team to be? And I think that this is kind of some of the most important stuff that came out of today. I know it's backloaded here. You can find like articles on this, like on Wolverines Way. I wrote about all three of the segments that we're talking about here, but I'm expounding more on them. I will be honest, not a good writer today. I'm just not. Like, there are days where you just sit down and just everything comes out the fingers so easy. And there are days like today where I'm like, even leaving the press conference, I just in a daze. Well, what day is it? What time is it? I have no idea. So anyway, just not used to being in Ann Arbor at 10 anymore. Now that I don't live there. So asked what the strength of the team is. Whittingham said this: we're going to find that out this spring. We have a decent idea, and we won't really get a lot of feedback the first couple of days with no pads. But you can't get into pads until the third day, and so that'll be a work in progress. But we think that we're going to be a physical football team. We want that to be our trademark. We want to be mentally and physically tough. And when you come to play us, you know you've been in for a physical contest. But we're looking forward to seeing how these things develop over the next 15 practices. We've got a lot ahead of us as far as what we've got to get accomplished. We've got to figure out the talent level of the players, the scheme. We have to learn scheme. They have to learn scheme and be able to assimilate that. And so there's a lot of things that we're going to find out this spring that are going to be key moving forward, obviously. All right, let's pause before I got the next one. So he's hoping the strength of the football team is what the strength of the football team has essentially long been. Last 2 years, maybe not as much, a little bit in, 2024. Last year was kind of negligible, right? They got bullied by Ohio State last year. Let's just call it what it was. But I think that at least we knew this, like the goal is to be what Michigan has been for the last decade plus. Like, they had good defensive lines under Brady Hoke. They just didn't necessarily have good offensive lines. And that it took until 2018 for Jim Harbaugh to put together the first good offensive line, I would say. I mean, 2015 and 16 was passable, but it wasn't, it's kind of like what the last 2 years were, essentially. They weren't dominating people until 2018 up front. So, okay, now we know what the intention I mean, we've already known this, but I'm just saying, we know the intention is for the team to be what it was at its apex, 2023, 2022, 2021, all of that. So now, asked a little bit more specifically, here's what Whittingham said. I think we'll be good on the line of scrimmage. As you mentioned, we've got some guys back with experience on offense. Jim Harding, our offensive line coach. There's no offensive line coach in the country better than him at developing talent. His track record speaks to that. He'll have 2 first-round draft choices this year, and so it's in good hands. Talking about the Utah guys in the draft. Now, here's what's interesting. Like what we've seen is like he's saying I like, not a simile like, but he's saying I like what we've seen in the workouts with the defensive line. Got 3 or 4 big interior guys that we think are going to be really good for us. Got to develop some edge guys, but based on what we've seen just athletically and moving around, I think we're going to be okay. So with that comes the why did, what I said kind of at the top of the segment. What do I think is maybe the most important thing that he said? Maybe it might have been that last part, because I think if you look at what everyone's been fretting for the last couple months, linebacker's been part of it, but so has been interior defensive line. And he's saying here, like, yeah, I think we're good at interior defensive line. It's maybe the edge. And like, if you have John Henry Daly, Cam Brandt, Nate Marshall, I think you feel pretty good about the edge. You'd think. But I think that the idea that he's like, no, I think we're set there. That could be a really good omen. Or it could be like last year, best front 7 in the country and not live up to the hype. But like, I think that in and of itself is interesting that wasn't asked about strength. That wasn't like, oh, what do I think the strength is? Defensive interior. No, he's not saying that. This was the answer to more just asking for more of his assessment of what he has in the trenches. But I think that if he's assessing it and saying like, I think we're good in the defensive interior, instead of being like, because he could have, if he would have said it the other way around, I think everyone would have been like, yep, that's exactly what we've identified moving forward, right? This is exactly what we thought. We'll see what happens. No, he's saying it like, okay, what you thought isn't exactly what we feel. Now we'll see. They got spring ball coming up, starting today. They're probably practicing right now. Someone asked on the Everydayer Club, when are they practicing? I'm gonna guess right now, because I know that we're gonna be meeting with coaches around 5 when we do meet with them. So that means that looks like they're generally doing practice before then, because they said it's after practice. So I'm not sure if that means practices are shorter. Might be, because practices before went to 6. So it's going to be interesting to just see how this all kind of pulls together. So we're going to learn a lot. Anyhow, that's going to do it for us today. We will be back tomorrow, Wednesday. And we'll see if we'll do a mailbag on Thursday. I'm thinking if we do one this week, it'll be Friday. I mean, I called for it on Thursday and we did it on Friday last week, but that's just sometimes how the cookie crumbles. Anyway, we'll talk to you again soon. Peace.